Well, good evening, and welcome once again to Letchworth Cable Access. I'm Kyle Adams-Zak, and tonight we have as our guests Tony Jones and Pilar McKay, who are the proprietors of the Silver Lake Brewing Project. Could you explain what the Silver Lake Brewing Project is? I think people watching this already know, but for somebody that maybe hasn't read a paper, what is it?
Go for it.
Well, Silver Lake Brewing Project is a microbrewery that's opening in Perry, New York. We're going to be located at 12 Borden Ave, which is right behind Burlingham Books in the Main Street area of Perry. We started 4 years ago as literally a project. The third owner, Ryan Fitzsimmons, is an architect in town, and I were talking about doing something to keep young people in town. And he just mentioned off the cuff that he was writing a business plan for a brewery. So I looked at him and I said, well, let's do it. And about 8 months later, we met Tony, and Silver Lake Brewing Project stuck to its name, and we're still going after all these years. Last year in April, we acquired our building, which is our core facility. This will be where we produce and also have a public tap room. And we're planning on being open late summer, early fall 2016.
So the name of the establishment will be the Silver Lake Brewing Project.
Yes.
And you're going to feature, I guess you're going to have to help me with the vocabulary, the correct vocabulary. Your own home brew, your own recipe?
Well, these are recipes that I've developed as a home brewer over time, but it's definitely a professional production facility.
Yes, yes.
And we'll have up to 10 tap lines available. And some breweries like to have 3 or 4 core beers that they have all year long. We may have a couple of beers in the end that we have all year long, but our idea is to have the lineup change with the seasons. In the summer, it's nice to have something that's maybe a little bit lighter and crisp. When it's hot outside, you don't want something that's really rich and thick and malty. But in the winter, those are nice beers to have. So our idea is to keep the tap list rotating both for interest for us as brewers, but also for the public. If they come in every month or so, there'll be something different. It's a reason to come back.
Now I hear the term microbrewery. Is that what you are?
Yes. We're actually nano. There's a term for that. It means people who are doing really, really small breweries.
Uh-huh.
We will be producing about 300 barrels of beer in the first year. The microbrewery category includes people up to 60,000 barrels per year. So we're at the small end of the scale.
So where will you be doing the brewing?
So our facility has both a 50-seat tap room, and it also has a separate part of the building that is the production wing. It's separated from the public space.
Oh, there's enough room to have a tap room and the brewery.
Yes, yes.
And you'll store on the premises as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so we'll be kegging everything that we make, and we'll be serving it in the tap room from our taps. They'll be stored in a giant cold room, basically. We will also have we'll do some barrel aging there, where we'll be using old spirit barrels, whiskey barrels, and wine barrels that we can age our beer in as well. You can age it for short periods of time or long periods of time, and it gives different flavor nuances.
It changes the flavor, how
Absolutely.
long you age it.
Right.
Well, for instance, say I was going to down and dirty brewery, the quickest turnaround possible. How long does it take from mixing up the recipe to when you can serve it? The
Sure.
shortest period of time.
Yeah, so from brew day to when I serve you a pint, we're looking at probably on the short end an average of 10 to 15 days. It's likely to be a little bit more than that, say 20 days on average.
Yes. So how do you go about creating a beer? First off, I guess we should define the different styles. I want to say genres, but I guess the correct word is styles, you said. There's lager, there's ale, there's porter. Well,
really, lagers and ales are your 2 major categories.
Okay.
And then with each one of those categories, there are multiple styles that branch out from there.
Okay.
So let's
ale
stick with
and
ales. We are going to be doing ales primarily.
Now, ale has a long history.
Yes, I mean, basically the Mesopotamians were doing brewing.
Was that the first type of beer that was created that we know of, or?
The problem is a lot of what was used to make beer doesn't survive the historical record because it wasn't.
you don't know
there
what
weren't
they
hard
did.
items, right? But it's been around for a long time. It's
Right,
basically
right.
liquid bread is the way to think about it. So our version of liquid bread will focus on ales mainly.
Ale.
And then from within that category, we'll focus on mainly bold American styles, but also do some French, Belgian classic styles as well. Lagering we may get into at some point. It's a separate set of equipment, or not separate necessarily, but additional equipment for us.
We mentioned French and Belgian styles and the classic American styles. What's the difference? Just the recipe or how it's done, or?
Yes and yes. So a lot of it actually comes down to yeast differences. There are hundreds of different brewing yeast you can use. Your more traditional American style yeast have a much cleaner fermentation profile, so you're getting more of the malt character and the hop character. Whereas a lot of the French and Belgian styles, they have their own kind of crazy wild characters. And so it's really the character from the yeast that you're getting in the beer that's complemented by the other ingredients.
This would be a good time to explain the basic elements of beer, because yeast is one of a cast of characters, really.
Sure, and we can even talk about the German purity law, right?
Yes.
The Reinheitsgebot.
All right, well, let's talk about the elements in the German purity law.
Water,
Elements.
From
grain.
Silver Lake, water from Silver Lake.
Right.
In our case.
So water, malt, so barley or wheat, yeast, and hops. That's it for the German purity law, which is why I don't necessarily follow that at all. But the Belgians are kind of like the other end of the spectrum. They will add in different kinds of sugars. They will use different kinds of fruits. They will use wild microbes, bacteria that produce acidic profiles.
What's a wild microbe?
If you would you take some grapes, and you've ever seen the powdery coating on grapes or apples?
Yes.
That's naturally occurring yeast. So you could take those grapes and put it into something sugary, or if you leave juice out and you've never smelled it. I have a daughter. When she was young, if you had a juice cup and it sat on the counter for a day, and you open it, it smelled slightly vinegary.
Yeah.
That's because there's always wild microbes that are ready to eat sugars and turn it into alcohol.
And we know this from Wyoming County, because if we leave our apple cider out on the counter, it kind of puffs up.
Yes.
It's unpasteurized.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, yes.
A very common occurrence.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you're talking about the Belgian ale, and it has wild microbes, and I interrupted you.
Oh, no. They could be wild. So there's lambic brewers who actually...
Okay, that could be a possible ingredient.
Right. So, most brewers use prepackaged yeasts that are available. They choose whatever strain they want for the characteristics they want. So you buy it from companies that produce it in mass. There are still some traditionalists, the Belgian lambics, that leave the unfermented beer once you've made the wort, which is what will be fermented into beer. They leave it in open containers and wait for whatever natural stuff to float in and ferment it. So, yeah, that's why I love the Belgians and the French for the styles. Yeah.
Back in the day when this would happen, it was kind of magic. It was really, science started to diagnose this pretty late, like in the 1800s. They started saying, oh, well, there's yeast, there's things going on. But for most of human history, it was kind of like, beer is magic. Here it is. It's fermenting. It tastes like this when it's in this town, and it tastes like this when it is in a different town. But nobody really could figure out what was going on with spirits in that way. So
That's
it's kind of really cool.
That wasn't the case with wine, was it?
A little bit, but wine is a different
Yes.
fermenting process.
Different process,
Yeah.
but I thought that they had that down. They knew if they did it.
Well,
They crushed the grapes and bottled it.
they knew the process, but they might not have known exactly why it happened, why it turned from juice into wine, until they were able to use microscopes and see these little bugs that ate things and gave you alcohol.
All right, so so you're going to offer several house brews, or?
Yeah, again, our idea is to change it up. We're I don't know. I don't want to say we get bored easily, but we like variety.
Yes.
And so I think that's our approach to our beer as well, is to give our customers a variety that changes throughout the year. So we have up to 10 taps available for beer. the idea is to maybe keep a couple around. If we find our customers really adhere strongly to one or two styles, maybe we'll keep them more regularly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the other, the thing is that's important for us too is to, go outside the box a little bit, experiment a bit. We might hit on something that our customers really love, or it might be something that maybe not so much, and we don't make it again.
And we want to be very inclusive. Something that we've heard a lot in this area is that people admit that they're not really beer drinkers. And that's a real challenge for us. Anyone who's been in college in the last 16 years is shocked to hear there are people who aren't beer drinkers. But there are, and I think that's a real credit to the New York wine industry to really market and do a really good job of communicating wine. Well, it's our turn as breweries to do the same thing about beer. So in that 10 lineup, we're really trying to find certain types of beers that could really interest wine drinkers and people who don't consider themselves beer drinkers. And also, we're going to have a craft soda selection so that people who don't drink anything can still come and use this space and still chill out and have a good time. Because we want to make sure that our space is as inclusive and a community space as much as possible.
So craft soda, soft drinks. you're
Soft
saying.
drinks, yeah.
Yes.
Which were very popular during
Yes.
Prohibition because
Yes.
that's what you could drink.
Now, am I correct in assuming that sarsaparilla is no longer available as a drink?
No, it is. You don't see it commonly, right? But it's still available.
Well, I thought I had read somewhere that it had been outlawed because it was a carcinogen. Or
Oh,
by
I don't know.
mistake?
I haven't heard that. I
Well,
know that you can buy extracts, and whether or not they're actually 100% legitimate sarsaparilla
Yeah.
versus something made to taste like it, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But we're thinking, things like ginger beer,
Ginger
really strong
beer,
ginger beer, or like a lemon seltzer or something on tap,
Uh-huh.
just to have something else refreshing at the end of the night.
Yes. Now, will you be serving food there, or is there not enough room for a grill?
Well, it's a good question. We actually, part of our space, if people drive by now, you'll see that there's two buildings adjacent to each other, and they're both our buildings. The one that has the mural on it, that was actually painted by Ryan and Caitlin McDaniel and myself, that is actually our tenant space. It had been a restaurant in the past, and that's what we're planning on doing, is bringing in a tenant who will be building out that space as its own separate restaurant. Eventually, we'll have a pass-through window where our customers can order food and then just eat it on premises. But we're probably looking at a year to 18 months for that to happen. So until that happens, we'll be serving bar snacks as much as possible from local vendors until we get to the point that our tenant is up to speed and can open.
Yeah.
We understand that food helps beer, so we want to get to that point as quickly as possible. So
And I think we're both salt fiends too, so you
I
understand.
love salt.
If you have
yes.
something, a nice beer, you want to have that counterpunch of a little salt. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, you have to have licenses to serve alcoholic beverages. If you say you were setting out pretzels, do you need a separate license or no?
For pretzels.
Say, as an example.
No, it's
No.
pre-packaged foods that are available for sale.
yeah.
We can do if we
Yeah.
don't have a working kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's different. If you're preparing food, it's one thing. If you're just serving pre-packaged items from other vendors,
Yeah.
no.
So you started brewing 10 years ago. What spurred you to experiment like this?
Okay, so
Did
I
you
was
grow up in Milwaukee?
No, I grew up just outside of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, actually, and I was a group of my friends down there and up here once we moved up. We liked to cook together a lot, and in North Carolina at the time there was a alcohol by volume limit on craft beer of 6%, and
6% meaning what?
6% alcohol by volume
Okay.
in the beer. So
We call that ABV.
ABV, yeah. So probably 80% of the craft beer being made in the U.S. at the time was above that limit. And so we said, well, we'll start making our own since we don't have access to that in North Carolina. So I got into it that way. And then when I moved to New York in 2007. Some friends I had here that I, again, enjoyed cooking with a lot, we decided to give it a shot. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Well, in your early days, did you have failed experiments?
Not too many, actually. I guess part of it comes from the people I started brewing with were scientists, and so they were really careful about cleanliness along the way. So in terms of infections, no, but making things that I didn't enjoy, yes. And you learn from all of that.
What about exploding bottles? You always hear about that from the Depression.
No, I've never had any bottle bombs, and that's basically contamination issues.
Yeah.
So I'll knock on wood, I've been good with sanitation, so. Yeah.
Was there anything in your background that would have led you to be a brewer?
Wow, let me think.
You grew up in Perry.
I grew
correct?
up in Perry, so I'm trying to think where I first got interested in craft beer. I would say that my friends in town actually are pretty much the people I learned the most about craft brewing, but I went to college in Ithaca at Cornell, and craft beer was normal. I went there in 2000. I didn't realize that it was a movement with like its own trendiness until I moved to Los Angeles, where the craft scene was really absent until I left in 2010. So things like growlers, which are 64-ounce containers that you can fill up with beer at a brewery, didn't really exist in LA. So when I moved back to the East Coast, I said, oh, this must be a thing. This must be a craft beer movement I wasn't aware of. But yeah, I mean, I think most of my beer education has really come from the Northeast. I think that we've really fostered some really great companies here. I think that our regional brewery system, something that's really unique, whether it's Matt's Brewing, which brews Utica Club and Saranac, or North American Brewing, which does Genesee and John Dundee's Honey Brown. These were really beers that on the West Coast were real, almost like cult brands,
Yes.
but for me were normal brands.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool to learn about the industry from a different perspective wherever you are regionally. And it's just exploded since I signed on to Silver Lake Brewing Project. I tried home brewing because I needed to. I started to work in restaurants in Washington, D.C. to learn more about the industry and just soaked it all in. So I'm playing catch up to Tony, but I am a little bit younger than him, so that should be allowed.
If you're just tuning in, our guests tonight are Tony Jones and Pilar McKay, who are two of the proprietors of the Silver Lake Brewing Project, which will be opening in Perry early fall, end of this summer. Are there wine snobs? Are there beer snobs?
Oh, yeah.
And is anybody going to be coming into your place going to be inhibited because of snobbery?
Well, I hope not.
Yeah, we hope not. I mean, I think that so we'll address it from our perspective, which is to put together a really comfortable atmosphere where people can come and have a nice place to hang out. We don't see ourselves as a beer snob, certainly. We love beer. We love trying new beer. We love, experiencing all the breweries that are opening up in our area, and we sort of cheer each other on. But if someone comes in and they're really snobby, let's say, about what it is they want to do, that's fine. We're inviting. We can come in and we can sit down and we can have a good conversation about it, and we'll learn something from anybody. So, there's no worries about snobbery
So
with us.
snobs are welcome, but the proprietors aren't snobs, and the atmosphere isn't snobby. It's
Definitely
very
not, yeah.
welcoming.
No, it's going to be a nice, relaxing community place to hang out, I think.
Now, the building that you're located in is a historic one. It has a long history. Are you able to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So our building, like we've mentioned before, is 12 Borden Ave. It's a building that's directly behind Burlingham Books. And it started its life in the late 1800s as a horse livery for the Hotel Perry. If you actually drive by today, you will see a post beam that's outside that Tony spent many days shining up and looking perfect. That was actually kind of the cornerstone, the corner post of that original structure. From then, it went into being a bathhouse, which was a cool thing to have. And then, it was a movie theater.
The Alhambra.
The Alhambra movie theater, which was really crazy because I used to live close to Alhambra, California, so that was really nice. And my mom's from Spain, and Alhambra's from there.
Yeah.
So.
I heard
It
a
was meant to
story
be.
from an old timer that when it turned into a movie theater, the smells from the livery stable
there.
still lingered in the building, and they called it in the village the Stinkatorium.
Yes.
Or the Horsatorium.
Horsatorium, yeah.
Horsatorium.
Yeah.
We want the public to know that it no longer smells like horses,
Okay.
so it's good.
That's good. Some airwick helped. So then it went from a movie house to what?
To a printing facility mainly. So like I said, there's two buildings. The one with the mural on it right now, that actually was a restaurant. We've gotten messages on Facebook and old matchbooks that indicate that it was a restaurant probably in the 40s and 50s. But eventually the entire facility became home to the Perry Shopper Perry Herald Company. So it printed materials, marketing materials, newspapers. That's where the newspaper was based. We've gotten reports that Brock Yates?
Brock Yates was a report,
Yes.
got his start there, yes.
Yeah, he had an office
He had
there.
an office
yeah.
there. We've heard reports, and I'm appealing to the public, that the original Cannonball Run materials were printed there. We'd love, if you have any, just to see them. If you want to donate them, that'd be great, but we don't want to pressure you. And it was the printing facility up through, almost 3 or 4 years ago. That's the Shopper had maintained a storefront there where they would accept your payment. They had a kind of a customer service office.
So if you've ever been in to place an ad, where the desk was is where our storage area for
Yeah.
the brewery will be.
Yeah.
So in the brewing facility section.
Yeah.
Where the desk was.
Right.
Yeah.
And the tap room, I guess, is going to be where the printing
Printing
presses
facility
were.
was. Yeah.
Right.
Now, renovating that building, an old building, did you run across any surprises, any adventures doing the work?
We had some surprises. We're going to set the stage. We have stripped this building down to the post and beam structure, and a lot of that's the credit to Tony. So he finds our surprises. I get the surprises in other places, like on Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you get the surprises in the actual reality
Yeah.
And
world.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were expected surprises, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 150-year-old building roughly, and when you start tearing off the veneer, you find rot, you find things that need to be restructured. It's not unexpected, but still, when you find it, it's great. We have to do this.
did it become more extensive than you pictured, or?
No, we built into our budget because of the type of the building and working with our partner Ryan Fitzsimmons, who's an architect. He has experience digging into some of these old kinds of buildings. So we did price in a lot of the restructuring. So we didn't know exactly what we would find, but it was priced in. And so it hasn't been too bad. We did quite a bit of restructuring, some work in the basement that no one will ever see, but it holds the building up and makes it stronger than it was. So,
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, our guests tonight are Tony Jones and Pilar McKay, who are two of the proprietors of the Silver Lake Brewing Project. We're just about out of time. You're going to be serving there it's a microbrewery. You're going to be serving some house brands, house ales. Do you have special names for the different recipes yet, or
we've kicked some around, but it'll sort of be wait and see.
Yeah.
it's to be unveiled?
Right.
Well, we're just about out of time. Is there anything you'd like to share with us before we go?
I think from my perspective, we've had a lot of help from the community and from our members. We're an LLC, so we have a number of community members that have helped with this process, and just the general support that we've gotten from the community, I think has been really, really important to keep this moving forward. We've had things donated to us. We've had time, people's time and energy donated to us. So I like to say thank you for that, certainly.
Yeah, it's really neat to have the ability to open a business where you grew up. So, we chose Perry very intentionally. Ryan worked here. I was from here. Tony liked to come here, apparently. So we all came to the conclusion that we were going to open on Main Street Perry. There was no doubt in that. So we've been very happy about that. And working with Wyoming County and the community as well. I also want to put in a little plug that we are actually 40% owned by women, which is very rare for the beer industry. So we want to make sure that our space is not, we want to make sure our space is welcoming to ladies. So we want beer to be something that's part of our vocabulary as well. So don't be shy. And if you think that you don't know beer, please try our at least come in and try a soda, because we want to talk to you if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, walkability was one of the important considerations for being downtown. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in. It's going to be a welcoming place, and it's going to open up the Silver Lake Brewing Project sometime in the early fall or the late summer. Our guests again are Tony Jones and Pilar McKay. And I'm Kyle Adamczak, and this is Letchworth Cable Access. And as always, we thank you for watching. Good night.